Hey guys, how's it going? It is Kyra here with another Awaken KSR video, and in today's video I'm going to talk about 5 heroes that I think are a lot better than I initially thought. A lot of the appreciation of these characters changed a lot, especially the further I progress in the game. You start to appreciate more things, or you're looking for different things that are really going to like early to mid game, and then eventually when you get to late game there's going to be other stuff that you want to get. And a lot of my kind of changes of how I thought about a certain character depended on where I was at in the game. So let's start with the first one here, which is a bit of a cop-out, but it's not just one particular hero, but it's any nuker that's not Mathesia, because so much of my progress in the early to mid game was essentially just, why wouldn't I just use Mathesia over any other nuker, have a potential to get 40% extra damage, and she has a 200% modifier. Then you could pair her with William. At the time, she and William weren't nerfed yet, so pretty much any nuker other than her just didn't seem that good. When you get to harder versions of Void Tower in here, when you start to progress up in the later stages, like I'm talking like in the anywhere from, let's say 70 and above, you start to face all these different types of, and having nukers for each element is super important. And so that made me really start to appreciate and have to rely on these other ones, such as Evra is absolutely insane. And then also I kind of had this, I don't know if you guys had this, but because she was a starter hero, like potentially I ended up choosing Hydri, but because she was in part of that selection of heroes that you could pick, I just assumed that she probably wasn't going to be one of the better heroes in the game. But that's not a good assumption. You know, it just felt like kind of a feels bad because you could guarantee pick her. But she's amazing. She's so good. And if you look at her kit here, first of all, she's green affinity AoE nuker, which is very rare. There's really not that many options there. But then she has crazy modifiers compared to the competition in this role, regardless of affinity. We have, you know, anywhere from 50 to 200% when booked. We have a ton of bonus turn potential with her trait here, where she's constantly calling to assist with artillery. She just does her job very well. She pairs well with a cursed set. So after using her and finally finding places where I couldn't really take Mathesia, or it would just be way too hard because of constantly getting deflections and stuff like that, she's amazing. She's very good, and happy to use her. And also another version of that same thing is going to be Valeria, in finding places where you actually appreciate her because of her typing. She's very similar modifiers, very good. She's resetting when she kills people. 180% modifier on her ultimate here. She's the same example as Evra, but different element. So you could cover the spread of every element in the game, essentially, except light and dark, with Valeria, Evra, and Mathesia. And then it took other content with mainly hard arena, and like when you start to progress in arena, and a hard void tower were like the main things where it's like, okay, I need more than just Mathesia here to be able to AoE nuke these people down. And then the last one I want to mention, but the best one in my opinion out of all these, especially for arena, is going to be Euron, but he's so rare that it's hard to want to mention him. So next hero that is better than I thought is going to be Mary. And I think everyone knows just how good Mary is, because she provides this right here, which is removes one negative effect from all team members and grants 1 stack of invincible to all team members for 1 turn. Invincible removed upon taking a valid hit. Other parts of content made me appreciate her special and her passive. And the big one is going to be in arena. She's probably the best answer to a corrupt Aurak in this high-end arena stuff. So if we are pushing up here and we're trying to beat these teams with Rebel set with Corrupt Aurak on here, like for example this guy, you potentially could get stunned, and it happens before you could go, so there's really no way around it. But you could take Marion, and she cleanses it with her passive, which is really cool that there's at least one character in the game that can actually save you from that particular mechanic in the game. Then this part right here is insane, especially for arena. What you do is grants a bonus turn to a team member at the end of the round, as well as damage up and immune. So you give them both these buffs. They hit like an absolute truck with the 30% damage buff. I like this way more than I like attack buffs. It just seems to hit way harder. I want to test it just to see how much better it is, but it feels like the percentage flat damage or flat damage reduction just feels so much better than attack buffs in this game. So then you give it to like your Euron or whatever your best nuker is, and you could just absolutely shred the other team. So I think she's great. She's more than just a character that provides invincible for your team. And then lastly, this part, I've never really used this. 30% chance to stun, too low of a chance, and you're really trying to use her ultimate and her special more often. But her whole kit is good, and she's used so much in this game. Like, she was already I already figured she was good, but I have a better appreciation of like the rest of her kit here, especially the her special and her passive. So very good hero, but even better than I thought. Mary's number 2. Next is going to be Mathesia. She's one of the starting heroes, and she has a revive, but so much of the early to mid game, I have absolutely no use for revive. Almost barely ever do you care about this, and you would feel pretty bad initially if you didn't know what was to come in the game later on. If you picked her, you'd be like, okay, this is just a massive waste of a pick. And for the most part, like there still is better progression heroes that are still good in my opinion, but I think the big value, late game value in Mathesia is pretty insane. When you start to appreciate reviving, is going to be, I would say, in guild, not necessarily the reviving portion, but like the other parts of her kit where she's providing shields with her with auto attack. When you have buffs, she's able to heal passively at a turn. And she just has a massive heal with her ultimate, let alone being able to actually revive you. But consistent areas where you can actually have a long encounter, you're going to be taking a lot of damage. She's amazing here, but mainly the place where she's going to get the most use is Hard Void Tower. And this is probably the hardest content in the game at the moment, and this is where she truly shines. So the hardest part of the game, she's one of the best characters you could get for this to be able to help you out. In a lot of these newer Void Towers, though, it's been all about going first and nuking. So depending on the Void Tower, she might not be nearly as valuable, but she's still an amazing hero that allows you to survive and revive those characters up again. So depending on the Void Tower, she's going to go up and down in popularity, but for once you finally get to Void Tower, you're going to appreciate just how good she is. Or at least I did. Like especially that first Void Tower with the not being able to stun. That Void Tower was very hard. And maybe it was the gear out to time because it was in the beginning of the game, but it took a long time to be able to go through those waves. She was one of the main characters. Her plus Brand were like a big combo I would use to be able to beat a lot of that content. Lastly, it wouldn't be a Kyr Mobile video if I didn't talk about this guy. I slept on was Krazerzak. He's my favorite character by far, but it wasn't until, because he's so rare and he just got buffed, that I just forced him in all my teams. I was like, I'm going to just see this guy. And there's a lot of mechanics to him that I really appreciate that are very rare, that are not necessarily just, okay, he has this ult here that does a ton of damage and it's 250% modifier to one enemy. Insane. If this target has less than 50% health, damage is increased by 50%, which is also insane. But the big issue with light and dark characters is that they don't really have affinity bonus that often. And affinity bonus in this game, in my opinion, is too high. I think 50% is just crazy, and it makes it to where you're constantly switching around your characters because you're constantly just leveraging the affinity bonus versus the character itself. And a lot of the games like this don't make the affinity bonus massive. And that was still, I feel like that's kind of his issue, that he's not really leveraging this, and a lot of times you're not going against dark characters that often. But besides the point, he's still amazing. Just damage wise, you're going to be hitting normal percentages for your light characters, except Euron. That's another reason why Euron's so good, is that he's always getting the affinity bonus, which is absolutely nuts. So he hits hard on his ultimate here, but I feel like it's deceptively hard with light dark characters because they're never really getting that affinity bonus. But I really like this modifier, especially when you can get them low. But this move here, well, there's actually a lot of part of his kit, because the thing that kind of made me a little underrate him was his passive, where you gave this damage dealing character block. And I think block is actually pretty good. Depending on the content you're in, any reduced damage effects taken, like 15%, whenever it's whenever it's a percentage of just damage reduction or percentage of damage up, it's actually really big in this game. And another example of that is Antonua with her passive. I noticed she is so much more survivable than what you would think, because she's C tier health, C tier defense. You would think she's absolutely paper, but she has this here, this Unicorn's Blessing, that's reduces damage taken by 30%, which makes her more survivable than like B tier health people, like for example Savannah, which I think is pretty cool. And same concept applies to Krazerzak, but he actually is tanky in A tier defense and B tier health, plus 15% damage reduction on his block. So he's like deceptively tanky as a damage dealer. But the things that I really leveraged were this right here: strikes to all enemies 4 times, dealing 100% damage to 100% total damage. Each strike has a 30% chance to remove one positive effect, which is very rare in this game to be able to remove more than one positive effect potentially. They've been going out of their way to nerf that, so he's getting kind of indirectly better by if you're looking to remove more than just one positive effect, especially in an AoE. He's your guy. And then his passive, where he's building rage and he's able to attack at a turn and actually hits pretty hard. So you could build him full damage if you want to, or you could build him with high focus if you want to make sure you're removing his buffs and debuffs. And then this right here is insane, the unhealable. This is such a hard ability to be able to get consistently. Normally it's on like a special, or on Hewlins, he's like the only other character I can think of that can do this on his auto attack. It's an 80% versus 100%. So let alone the rest of his kit being good, and he's tanky, and not only is he doing unhealable, but he's removing buffs. So he's a weird combination of, do I want to build him all damage, or do I want to make him an actual good support character? And having that option there in a light dark character is pretty nuts, in my opinion. So I didn't appreciate just how good Unhealable was until I actually used him. And I was sitting here especially in Arena against Mathesias and stuff, I would just basic attack a lot of the time, unless they were under 50% and I thought I can actually nuke them. Really good character, but I did not appreciate just how good he was until I actually got to use him. And so it's one of those things where it's cool. He lives up to the hype of like, he's a 1 in 1,000, be able to get a light dark legendary, and he's actually really good and fun to play with because there's so many options. And that's why I like these games, like when characters are not just blatantly obvious to be able to how to build them, where to build them, where to put them in. Like a lot of these AoE nukers, it's okay, put them in an average set and just maximize as much crit damage and crit rate as possible. And that's all the decisions you have with them. They're effective, but it's kind of boring and it makes it not fun to talk about. Whereas finding the best Kreiserzag build is really difficult. Depending on the situation, you could go a whole bunch of different ways. So that's why I think he's fun, but also that's why I underrated him, especially with when they made his passive a block, which is bizarre for the rest of his kit there, you know? So that's gonna be my list there. Is there any other characters that you ended up maxing that you were underrating that you think is a lot better than they actually are? I'm curious to hear what you guys think about this, because there's another one that I think I've been underrating. I'm going to be doing a video on him. I've been kind of giving him a hard time in a lot of my videos, but I'm going to be testing him, and I think he hits like an absolute truck of this part right here, the deals bonus damage to NATO effect. There's been comments saying that people use him. I'm curious to actually give him a shot. So he might also make this list, but I haven't got to test him yet. I'm waiting to be able to farm the ability mats. That's going to be the list. So let me know in the comments below what your versions of this was. And with that, guys, I'm out. Peace.